meadows of the Sunshine State, redacted is his home, lives a man named David Wright, who pens the great unknown. Diet Coke runs through his veins, a decoy wallet keeps him rich. Paranoia fuels his pen and creativity's his niche.
The Self-Publishing Podcast Gang is back together for a very special episode of Write, Publish, Repeat. Today we're talking about Johnny's recent appearance at Author Nation. We gave a talk about being an artisan author. Johnny shares some insight on his new book of the same subject, and we discuss the differences between rapid release and artisan authoring on this week's episode.
Write, publish, repeat, it echoes through the air. A chorus for creators, a call to those who dare. With cookies as his compass and a pen that won't retreat, he journeys through the pages. Write, publish, repeat.
Hello and welcome to Write, Publish, Repeat. We are back with Sean and Johnny B. Truant, who they met up at Author Nation, and Johnny gave a talk. Was the talk called Artisan Author?
It was called The Artisan Author. It was called, hold on, I can be more specific than that. Listen to me being like, I'm going to be an interview subject. It was called The Artisan Author, the low-stress, high-quality, fan-focused approach to escaping the publishing rat race. That was what I called it. And it was well-received, so I
saw that talk. He's not bullshitting. There was applause and everything.
It was like a packed room, right?
Actually, yeah, no shit, this is true. So we both had a talk. There was plenty of room for seats in my talk.
But you were in like a really big room, right?
Plenty. I showed up a couple of minutes late to Johnny's, and like it was standing room only. Like there was three of us who came into the room at the same time, and it had like just started like a minute before. And the person who let us in was like, just so you know, you're not going to be able to sit together. And I fortunately, it was almost like someone was saving me a seat. I got the front row right next to Johnny, and it was great. And Johnny's, here he is.
Heckling distance.
Yeah, there was literally standing room only in Johnny's talk, and it was very well received.
Look at Sean comparing crowd sizes like he's Trump. That's going to be relevant for 4 more years. All right. Yes. So we're having Johnny on. Johnny is writing. Tell us about what made you come up with the Artisan Author. And
I want to give a behind the scenes first. Okay.
Yes,
so the behind the scenes is that it sounds like I wrote a book and asked if I could come on and like talk about it. But what actually happened was these guys were like, you should come on and talk about the Artisan Author. I was like, okay, I think I should write a book. So I put up a pre-order for it, and I was like, okay, that'll be great. But just so you know, this didn't exist until these guys kind of like decided it for me in a great way. Like I wanted to write it. But,
well, we're going to do this like every few months.
Well, no, that's
right.
a good question. Johnny and I did go to Author Nation together, and it was really cool. So at some point after this talk, there was no discussion of a book, nothing like that on the horizon. But the talk did go really well. And then the first time the idea of a book, like when was the first spark where like, hey, maybe there's something here? Because the message resonated. It was a loud message that a lot of people really wanted to hear.
The applause. He heard the applause. He's like, oh, fuck, I want more of that.
I did. That actually is fairly legitimate. That's actually a fairly good description of what occurred. No, I do like presenting. I do like being on stage. I do like giving speeches and stuff. But it was almost right away, I could tell that it was resonating. I should probably tell you what it is in just a second here. But I could tell in the presentation that people were kind of nodding along. No. It's a cliffhanger. Right. I'm going to tell you all the context, and then I'm going to tell you what the thing is that we've been talking about for an hour. And it was, and then people came up to me afterward and were like, oh, that was really great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. These are things that I've been thinking, and nobody's voiced them. And it was kind of a contrary talk, and I think it was what a lot of people just really, I think it was not to be too melodramatic, but it was kind of like a ray of hope for, I think, a lot of especially new authors. And for the rest of the conference, I had people coming up to me and saying, wow, I really liked that. Thank you very much. And so I think it was the actual book idea was probably a little high on that and on other things. And Sean and I were talking, and I think that's when it came out. It was like, oh, I could probably write a book on that. But to describe it, so that I don't leave you all in suspense, the idea is, I'll tell it with a story, right? Because we're storytellers. So last year at 20 Books to 50K, it was the last 20 Books to 50K conference. And then Joe and Sue's took over the contract that Craig Martell had with the Horseshoe Hotel for that, and then basically put their new conference called Author Nation in the same place. So it looks very similar, but it's a totally different conference. But a lot, the same people and same topics refined in very specific ways. Did it feel
different to you, Johnny? Because I didn't have the context to compare.
Well, one of the things that I told a few of the people who were involved, and this was meant as a compliment, and I think it is a compliment, is that while they were making fundamental difference, they were making some changes. I knew that they were making a handful of changes to, like, it doesn't even matter, but they were making changes, and yet they managed to convey, at least at the beginning, I thought, a lot of the same vibes, which, we ran the Smarter Artist Summit. The vibes were like huge. It was like, sense of community, and
I'm going to say 80% vibe. That's what we had.
Right. We gave a little bit of content, but basically we gave you vibes. So that's what I thought. I said it felt like a cousin. It felt similar. It felt comfortable. And I think a lot of people were wondering whether it would be when they were deciding whether they should come back. But when I came to that last year, when at the last 20 books conference before it became Author Nation in 2024, it was my first time out doing kind of the public facing thing in like 5 years. We did this last Smarter Artist Summit in 2019, something like that. So I guess it was 4 years.
Right before COVID.
Right, exactly. We dodged that particular bullet, matrixed past that shit, and other people took it over, and it was a whole thing. When I went to that, I was seeing the panels, like the six-figure author panel, and this is the first time I'd seen AI discussed in an author capacity in public. And there were a lot of people talking about how many books can you possibly write this year with AI? And there's a contingent that was just like, we're going to go as fast as we possibly can and not worry about anything else.
A book a minute.
Just, as much as we possibly can. And I just remember thinking, like, number one, for me personally.
Wait, Johnny, how do you feel about publishing books faster than you can read them?
Well, that's what people kind of told me we were doing for a while back when we were considered fast instead of slow.
How do you feel about the fact that our fast is now irrelevant?
Yeah, we're now fucking in the slow lane here.
Because I'm an artisan author,
it
it's
doesn't
a strength.
matter.
It's a strength. So as I was getting all this, it was kind of like
we wrote books slowly.
We used to write them by hand on the back of a shovel. It was kind of like when you don't see somebody for a handful of years and then you see them again, you're like, oh my God, you've grown so much or something like that because you've been absent for a while. So since I was gone for a while, it was like, whoa.
Jimmy, that fucker never grows up.
What the fuck happened to the industry in my absence? It was like, I don't know that I fit in this industry. I don't know that anybody knows what we did. I don't know that anybody cares. I don't know. Anyway, but I kept thinking about the new author, the person who comes in and they've never written a book, or they're just about to write a book, or they've written their first book and they have like stars in their eyes and they're like, I'm going to learn how to, I'm going to sell my book and I'm going to live my dream. I finally finished my book. And then they're just crushed by the weight of, oh, you're not going to write 6 books this week. You're not, you aren't going to run a $5,000 a month minimum Facebook ad campaign. You aren't going to sign up for all the socials and hire a staff to do it. And I thought, like, there was a moment where I was kind of like, wow, I might be fucked here. But thinking of that author. And then I thought, well, no, because just like there are people now who increasingly in a downloadable digital, no like tangible assets sort of a world want vinyl. They want actual records, things they can hold. Even my son, who doesn't want vinyl, wants CDs. Which feels like neither nor, but he's like, I want to be able to hold it. I want to be able to say that I own it. And
my son wants vinyl. I'm trying to steer him to CDs because I got a fucking closet full of them.
Well, and they want physical books. A lot of these kids, we thought they were all going to want ebooks, but the ones that I know don't. They want physical books.
Are cassettes cool again?
Actually, yes. Do you know about this?
Pain in the ass.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It's like that. You talk about pure nostalgia value because there's no other value. Like, who the hell wants cassettes? That was the low point. That was the dip of music.
I like when they warp and get all jammed in there. You got to slowly pull it out and hope you don't break it.
I saw some meme that had a number 2 pencil and it was like, cassette rewinder. And only our generation understands that that's when your tape deck eats your tape.
Blow it into the Nintendo.
So the idea of the artisan author was, rather than do algorithmic thinking and try and go, ironically, instead of like write, publish, repeat, ad nauseum, because we kind of started a little bit of that and then others took it much, much farther, was what if instead we took the Kevin Kelly idea of 1,000 true fans? And so you go slower, you focus on quality, you focus on making beautiful things, and then try to appeal to your 1,000 true fans rather than the faster, high stress of
So craft.
Write, publish, pontificate.
yes.
So it's craft plus quality plus time.
And I should be clear that rapid release, what it's, so Write, Publish, Repeat is now called rapid release usually, which means, and it's gotten more and more rapid. Like they were calling it rapid release 5 years ago. Now it's rapid as fuck release is what they call it now. This is the opposite of that. Rather than trying to chase the algorithms, which is what that's intended to do, to keep you relevant in like Amazon's algorithm. Instead, what if you could sell direct? You could sell on Kickstarter. You could do whatever you want. You could make special editions with gold stamping and sprayed edges or whatever, because you're courting your 1,000 true fans instead of the anonymous algorithms.
So it's so much more sustainable, and therefore you don't have to worry about, stepping on or staying on the treadmill, because that's the problem. If you're a new author, you have to learn all these 9 different disciplines that have nothing to do with telling a story.
I think that for some people that faster is correct. It's the right approach for them. But it's not for me. And I think it's not for a lot of people, because a lot of people come to writing craft first. It's like, I love writing. I love telling stories. This is what I want to do, is to tell this story and express myself.
So it's about the process, not the product.
Exactly. And I think it becomes about the product by default. And the people for whom that's right and ideal, great. But I don't think that's the majority. I think that a lot of people, they have one book, they have 2 books, and they just wanted to express themselves and they want to have some fighting chance with it. Imagine you haven't written any books, and you finally finish the thing that's been in your heart, and you're like, okay, sweet. And you go to a conference and they tell you, okay, now set that aside, and within the next 2 to 4 weeks, write another one. Right. And you're like, what? I can't do shit with this one? And then, but by the way, that's not enough. You need to do that 3, 4, 5 more times, and then maybe you have a shot.
Well, it's the whole idea that you're not going to make money unless you write in a series. Between the 3 of us, we have a lot of series, but I think we also all love the standalones. We love just going into a world and going deep and then moving on to another world. And the idea that's exponentially harder to get attention for if you just have a series with X number of books. There were so many people I talked to at Author Nation that they spoke in series. This is how many books my series has, and that's why.
And it's become like how many words are in a serial. People act like there's hard and fast rules. I mean, I should be really clear, like, this isn't right for everyone. I'm not saying this is the solution, because there's no map. There's no step-by-step process. If you're like somebody who can write fast, you probably have a better shot of a lot of success right away doing the rapid release model. Like, this is not a for sure thing. It's slow. It's craft focused. You have to be good with people. One of the things so when we did Author Nation, I sold books at the book selling event on Friday, and I loved it, and I did really well. So I just, before we signed on here, signed up to sell books at the Galleria Christmas market.
Oh, that's cool.
But that's the sort of thing you probably wouldn't think to do that as a rapid release author, because you'd better be writing the next book instead of like one by one forging fan connections and having those hands-on.
But you could get legit 3 true fans at an event like that, and then they're your fans forever.
Which sounds shitty, but if you know 1,000 true fans, you only need 1,000, and they're very hard to get. So the idea of, like Sean just said, 3 true fans, just as an example.
That wasn't me busting on Johnny. I think 3 true fans is amazing if you can get them all on one day.
True fans are hard. Like, what do you think? Have you read anything that suggests how many casual readers you might need to go through to get true fans? Do you have any idea of a metric on that, to get 1 true fan?
I imagine it's like 1,000, probably.
That's sort of what I think.
Not, but anywhere between 100 and 1,000. I don't think it's easy. I think it also depends on like how exceptional you happen to be at bonding with your readers, and I think that you're ahead of the curve here. But I would use 90 from the studio as an example. So 90 came to an event that we had, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, a long time ago at this point, and it was a genre therapy event, and she proved, well, why can't I sell books? And the reason she couldn't sell books, spoiler alert, is because she writes like Dean Koontz with a twang, but because she's
with a southern twang, because she's a lovely Christian woman, she had like checked all of her books as Christian fiction, which is not the genre at all. So she wasn't selling anything, and yet she had like 15,000 5-star reviews. The amount of true fans that she had as a ratio to readers is what made us want to invite her into the studio immediately, because
clearly your readers love you, right? So I think that Johnny said you need to be good with people. That's absolutely true. But if you're great on the page and you know how to convert that to like emotional engagement, I think that's something an artisan author absolutely has to have.
Well, I was going to ask, especially for people starting out, I think you have one benefit in that you were part of this system and you were writing fast and you have an audience sort of built in. But for somebody starting out, and even you kind of, doing it a little different now, how do you build a new audience slowly in a way that you can also make a regular income at it?
Yeah, so I should be super clear on this because I love you guys out there in listener land, but having talked to you guys for a long time, I do know that there's a certain pervasive attitude where you're just waiting for the nugget that will make it all work. And it's not the case. Like, if you want to get rich quick, just click past this episode because you're not going to get rich quick. It's not
That's
a
our
for sure
heist
thing at all.
episode next week.
Well, you got one coming up. Like, there's one coming up that's going to tell you all the secrets. It's just going to be like, push this button.
It's episode 7, you guys.
But it's not a way to get rich quick. Again, I want to be kind of clear on this. Like, this is what feels right for me. And so because I gave this talk and so many people resonated with it, I decided to write the book about it. And I'll talk about all the stuff that I think is relevant and I think is ways that you can succeed at this, but is so not for sure. And it is so not easy to follow a path. Like, it's not a follow a path. Write, publish, repeat was in some ways follow a path. It was like, well, just write, publish, and repeat. I guess I would say, I don't know that it will work for any one person, but for the type of person that it's right for, there's no other option really. Because the person who's art first is not going to be able to do rapid release without burning out. I mean, how many, you guys have talked to as many authors as I have. How many people have you seen or heard about who are doing that rapid release thing where it's like go, 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 and you can't take a vacation? Because if you take a vacation, then you lose all the juice that you have in KU. How many of those people are still around, say, 2 years after they show up?
Well, I think that there's two camps there. It seems like you either make it big and you're able to handle some support staff and just you treat it very much like a business, although you are getting away from a lot of what took you into the game in the first place, or you just burn out. You're like, I just can't do this. It's not worth it. It seems like you kind of fall in one of those two camps.
I think that this is probably fair to say. I mean, I hope this is fair to say, is that I'm not working with Sterling and Stone right now. And the reason for that, I think, is to some degree, it's a little bit of this. It's not black and white. It's not like you wanted to do rapid release and I want to do artisanship. But I do think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Sean, like you like the idea of building a business and building systems and getting support. And I don't. Like, I'm a solopreneur if I'm anything. I want to just do me, and that means running my own little thing. And for me, the manifestation of that is I want to make small and personal art and try to make that work. I don't want to build skid support staff and build a system, which is what you need to do to survive. Is that fair?
Well, I want to cut in. I want to answer for Sean here. I think I honestly
Oh,
believe
what a weird change of events.
he could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe part of him is very entrepreneurial, but there's another part of him, I think he wants to help the people in this studio make a living doing what they love, writing stories and stuff. And I think when you take on so many people into your studio and you become this thing, at that point you have to think like a business and, publish enough that you can pay those people. And I don't know, am I wrong there? Like,
No,
is that part of it?
that's absolutely true. I mean, we all three of us can laugh at the days when I, rattled the saber and said, we are not a revenue-driven business, right? And, well, okay, just spoiler alert, not being a revenue-driven business gets your business in a lot of trouble.
You're out of business.
Right. You have to build those systems in. And that is one of the reasons that we have such a qualified CEO and COO in there now. And I am the founder because I do love the ideas and I do love the help. Like, I love giving. I love having a studio full of people who give more than they take, and everybody wants to, like, rising tide for all ships. Like, that is an amazing thing. But to Johnny's point, you do have to build profitable systems in there, and everybody has to fit into that engine.
And I do think if it was, us three still doing it and, we never, met everybody that we met and took them in, I think our release schedule would have been different. Our strategies would have been different by necessity, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that to stay relevant in this game, you have to know how to evolve. You can't do the same thing, even write, publish, repeat. Like, as it stands, write, publish, repeat does not work anymore. You still need to write, you still need to publish, you still need to repeat, but there's so many other pieces to that. And I feel like
We got to make a longer book title then.
well,
It's already pretty long. Is that long ass tagline?
Well, it's
Write,
no
publish,
required
repeat,
guide to
advertise.
self-publishing success, right? But it's still not about luck, but you need more adaptation. You need more strategy than before. And I think that adaptation is the common denominator here, but it's different. The way I'm wanting to adapt to the current present is very different than the way that Johnny is wanting to adapt, but we're both adapting, right? So Dave, you're adapting by kind of coming in again with a beginner's mindset, which is really helpful. And we've had a lot of progress because you're approaching it like that. Johnny's approaching it like a veteran. Like, I've done this, I've seen that show. I don't really want to play on those stages. I want to play on that stage over there. And he's just carving his own path. And that's really cool. And I'm trying to take all of this and think, I built Sterling and Stone, which is it's a big company now with a lot of like moving pieces. And so it's not nimble and agile. And so over here, I'm like, how can I go really fast and do cool things that I couldn't do before with, the big machine? And Author Nation was very inspiring for me in that way. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited.
You got to come next year, Dave.
Yeah, I told him, dude, yes, Dave, you should absolutely come next year. It will be.
You would get so much love.
You get so much love, dude.
Oh, I don't want people near me. I mean,
I'm actually
not an incentive.
I'm really proud of us, and I think that going to this event together made me even more proud of us, because in case it's not clear, I call it like kind of sarcastically, but it's probably accurate. I call it a business divorce, right? So like business wise, and I was not a good fit
Did you
for
argue
Sterling
over
Stone. Like I was not helping Sterling Stone, right? And
Did you argue over who got to keep Dave?
Well, I think Sean got to keep Dave, but I mean, I have visitation rights.
Or
Right.
is it got
to
or had to? I'm not really,
Right.
not really sure.
You're stuck with him.
Yeah, I definitely got custody of Dave. There's no question.
I have every other weekend. He comes and stays in my basement. But what I was saying is I think it's cool that we were mature enough to be able to have that separation with no animosity. And I'm now doing exactly what I want to do. And you two and Sterling and Stone are doing exactly what you want to do. And yet we're able to work together in a way without working together. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, me too. Like well, Author Nation could not have been better for me. I wanted to step back into the community, and that was enough. I would have left Author Nation feeling jubilant. But beyond that, like to feel like such a deep spark for fiction and have so many ideas that we'll talk about it in future episodes. Like I'm really alive right now in the different ways that we can market some fiction. And
Dave, are you really alive right now? Or are you
I am so alive.
Dude, Dave, I want to return to the Artisan Author. But I would like to spend 1 minute talking about Dave's sleeping schedule.
Oh, I would like to spend way more minutes than that. If I could do that. And by the way, my son has the exact same sleeping schedule, I'm pretty sure. So,
Dave, how many hours have you slept in the last week?
I had most of my days were 3 to 4 hours, and then I had like 2 10-hour days that I was able to get in. So I just fucking crashed, and yeah. So right now I got 4 hours last night, so, and that was like I woke up at 2 a.m.
I shudder to think about what Dave's insides are doing. Okay,
we should get him an
it's
Aura
not
ring.
good. I'm not choosing this. It's just happening to me, and I'm along for the ride. But I do want to bring this back off of me.
No.
I do want to ask Johnny, like, I was always amazed how fast you wrote, and you wrote very clean copy for writing fast. So now, are you taking the time to write more slowly, and are you telling different kind of story?
I love that you asked this question, because I experienced something I know the answer to this, and it's not what I expected. So I thought the same thing. I was like, and I remember like Sean will back me up. Like we've had these discussions. I was like, I want to slow down like 6,000 words plus a day. It's just too fast. I want to go slower. And so that was the idea. Once I started out, I was like, I'm going to go slower. And I talk about going slower is one of the kind of tenets of being an artisan author. But what turned out, and I'll cut like a lot of the verbiage in the middle here, is I realized that I need to go fast to find the flow. So strangely enough, to be the artisan author and slow down, I still need to draft fast. So 5,000 to 6,000 words a day, which is what you guys all thought was so impressive back when it was impressive, and it's no longer impressive. That's what I'm back to doing. But the time taking happens after the draft is done. So for instance, I'm releasing a new book on the 26th called Winter Break. Sean knows this book. I wrote it for my daughter.
I love the book.
I wrote it for my daughter. So I wanted to make it just so, and I did things like it has multiple POVs, and so each POV has a chapter image. Like my actual dog is in this book, so I have a picture of my actual dog is one of the characters' chapter image, and I made sure it needed an author's note. Like a lot of times I'll skimp on the author's note, and when I publish it, I'll do something a little sexier with it, and that's where I'm taking the time. When I republished Pretty Killer, which is Sean and my kind of Agatha Christie, Realm and Sands do Agatha Christie. It's a dinner party murder mystery. So there's an invitation that we had just in text in the Kindle file, like you were cordially invited. But I made an invitation, like graphically, that I put into the book. Gore Point was a book that I did with gold foil stamping and everything for my Kickstarter. So the taking the time happens after, but I would have told you I would take my time drafting, but it turns out that creates shittier copy. And I create better stuff and feel more in flow if I go faster. But then rather than finishing and then rushing to publish and rushing to start a new one, I'm instead pausing and saying, what can I do with this one that's cool, if that makes sense.
So the crafting is really not about you or the story. It's about the reader experience.
I think it's always about the reader experience. I think that in my case, it manifests as I still need to draft fast, and then I will do the prettying up later. But I think that for some authors, it might manifest as I've been rushing through my prose, and so I will slow down and I will take more time. For me, that's not the case. But it's always about the reader experience. One of my slides in the Artisan Author talk that I gave 6 pillars of Artisan Authordom, which if you want, I can go into the slide deck and pull them out. But one of them was treat readers like gold, which we all think we treat readers like gold, but we don't, right? Like most of us, it's like, oh, thank you for buying my book. That's great. If you emailed me, thank you. That's great. But it's not.
Fuck off.
How can I make this one? Because remember, 1,000 true fans. If you have somebody who's a true fan or tipping toward true fan, I'm going to put all my effort into pleasing that person. And I had a few kind of case studies of things that I did that took a lot of time and took a lot of personal one-on-one effort. But because of that, I gained true fans. Whereas if I hadn't done that, like the time that a lot of people are putting into ads or whatever, I'm taking the time to answer my emails very thoroughly. I will spend 15 minutes on an email if it warrants
Didn't
it.
You used to make fun of me for responding to emails?
Well, no, I think I always responded, but there was definitely an arm's length. Like I definitely operated at arm's length, and I kind of wanted.
I'm getting into philosophical hour-long conversations with readers.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do a little bit more now. Honestly,
I had to step back from that because
I guess Dave's an artisan author. You actually are an artisan author.
Dave is an artisan author.
Yeah,
he got roped into weekly.
He was the original artisan author.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just stealing it from him, like I steal everything.
All right, Sean, I'm gone. I'm going to go shack up with Johnny now.
Well, you guys were slowly morphing into each other there at the end.
Right. I've already said that you're 2 generations of my family. But you're both my dad and my son combined.
I actually completely relate to that. I can't slow down with my drafting because then I lose flow. So if I'm like, oh, I would like to bask in this a little more. I would like to spend a little more time with this, which I had a book I was working on a couple of months ago that was like this, where I thought, oh, I actually want to spend more time with this. But what I did is I ended up fucking around and not really sticking on the page because it's the muscle memory. It's writing in flow and then just becoming one with the story until the buzzer goes off. I have the same experience. And then when I'm in post-production, ever since getting back from Author Nation, I'm still thinking in the same terms but different. So you're thinking, what can I do to make this a better reader experience in these different ways, like the actual product itself? And for me, I'm thinking, what are the interesting reader experience ways that I could do to get this idea out into the world? What are the different mechanisms and channeling? But it is still the same kind of principle where we're not really slowing down on the storytelling. We're finding different ways to make the second part of the storytelling more compelling for our audience.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could create bonus material or author's commentary or even writing an author's note is something that I think gets rushed through. Or my weekly emails. Like I have a very robust email thing, if that makes it doesn't make sense, I'm sure. A lot of authors email their list every week, but I spend a lot of time with those emails and a lot of time trying to be personal.
Yeah, your emails are basically essays that people would put on their own site, and you put as much attention into a weekly email, it seems, I get them every Saturday morning, that most people would into putting an epic post out there in the world and driving traffic to it. But it still has this sense of intimacy, and even if I didn't know you intimately, I would think this author really cares. Like, this author is clearly cares about me as a reader.
Yeah, artisan authordom to me it varies a little bit from person to person, but I would say for me, the only thing, and this includes you too, Sean, because you've co-written so many of my books, is the only thing that's consistent, and I'll just speak from my perspective because I'm running my own thing, is the only thing that's consistent between all of my books is me. Like, it's not genre, voice, right? It's the voice, it's the attitude, the kind of casual inserting of humor, whether it's relevant or not, the RoboCop references or, whatever. Those are things that are those are the consistent elements. And so that's why I put so much.
I feel like you owe me a Judge Dredd reference in your next book.
I'm just going to put a Cybertruck in the next book, and that'll just be it. And we'll just understand that's the vehicle from Judge Dredd. So in the book, I have 6 pillars of the artisan author, and one of them is think outside the box, which is, again, I just want to be clear, anybody who's interested in this, in watching the presentation from Author Nation or reading the book or anything, don't expect a map to follow, right? I'm sorry, this is not easy, and you have to be intelligent. You have to think on your feet.
It's more of a belief system that you're not asking anyone to subscribe to the belief system, but it is a belief system. Hey, these are the things that I hold dear in my creative career, right?
Kind of like a war of art, sort of.
It's a little war of art, but I would say it's slightly more practical. I do have actual suggestions for things that I've done. I have kind of case studies. And by case studies, they're just very simple. So I'll give you one.
The Book People story?
That's a good one. So the Book People story is that my books are, and Sean's books too.
I love this story because it's so over the top. And that's kind of what you're
saying.
So
this is the one where, okay, so I think if this isn't the story you mean, then let me know. So the books, Unicorn Western, The Full Saga, Fat Vampire, and Pretty Killer. So Unicorn Western and Pretty Killer, Sean co-wrote with me. Those books are on sale at the Austin iconic bookstore, Book People. I was like, I've always wanted to see my books in a bookstore. I've always wanted to walk into a bookstore and see my books. And so now I can, because I live in Austin. And so I told my list about that, and I said, hey, if you are in town and you want to come down to Book People, let me know. Just shoot me an email. I'll come down. I'll sign it. The first person who did it, his name was Ryan, and we sat down for 20 minutes and talked about whatever, and I signed the book.
And he didn't try to murder you? What
Dave,
the hell?
Will you please meet people in rural Florida?
No.
Can I send an email to our list?
No.
Dave will meet you and have coffee with you, even though
I will only do that if my sniper cousin is got the time to set up camp nearby.
My sniper cousin is my next story.
The one that it's like my cousin Vinny, right? The one that I really like is the one where I did a Kickstarter for Gore Point, which was also a Sean co-write. And
you write with that fucker a lot.
I know I do. I've only written a few things without him. And so when that was done, I did numbered and signed copies as one of the perks, right? So that's like if you get a series of art prints, then you say, okay, well, there were 100 art prints, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 100, and the lowest numbers
666
to 666, and that's where you stop, and that's forever, for eternity. And those they're more valuable if they're lower numbers. And so I had 2 tiers that were like $5,000 and $1,000, which nobody was ever going to get, and they didn't. But I thought, well, I need to bump up those and have if you get the 1,000 or 5,000, you'll get the lowest numbers. That's one of the things you'll get, in addition to some other shit. And so when nobody got those, I said every level lower than that would just kind of get a mishmash, right? I'm not going to keep track of, it's just too much.
Did you just give them a rock?
Just random numbers. And so I had 3 people who got it $250. That was my highest tier that sold. And one of the guys took a long time to reply to his Kickstarter survey. And so when I got to him, I was like, oh, hey, thanks for filling that out. You're getting number 14 or something like that. And he very kindly, but firmly replied and said, okay, but I get that I've read through everything and you don't say that you're going to give us the top 3, but let me tell you what I kind of thought, because only 3 people got the $250. And I read through this whole thing and I was like, fuck, he's right. Like, he's right. I absolutely should have given these 250 people 1, 2, and 3, but I hadn't. I'd already sent them out. And so I said, well, okay, I kept number 1 for myself. I don't know why. I just thought it would be keep it. And I said, I'll just give that to you. I'll give you the number 1 copy. And he was so delighted that I would give him my copy that it's like true fan for life. And that's the game to me, is like, as an artisan author, it's almost like it's a fun strategic puzzle to say, how do I take that person who may be like modestly interested in something that I do and make them a true fan? Like, how do I win their allegiance? And that's fun. Like, I think that's fun because it's person to person rather than anonymous.
I have an idea. Let's give Dave some suggestions on how he can be a better artisan author.
I'm gonna show up at your dinner table.
I really like a Dave-a-thon or something. We could have. He's at the local. What do they call bookstores in Florida? Do they have bookstores in Florida?
No, they don't.
Where you live?
They were all burned down in the race, right?
They call them Satan holes.
So you actually can't. You actually can't go to a bookstore where you live.
No, I literally have no bookstores near me.
Wait, okay,
Dave walks
0.
out on the street and they throw Molotov cocktails at him.
Anymore.
I'm not joking. And if you go to the shopping center, if you go to Publix and you go to look at the magazines, there's like 4 sections of the magazines.
Penthouse,
3 of them
ammo,
are guns and ammo. Nothing about creativity or anything remotely like what I'm about.
Okay,
there must be a guns and ammo episode about hunting down creative people.
Probably, yeah.
Dave, like, how within miles? Where's the closest bookstore? Like, no exaggeration.
I'm trying to do this in a way you can't triangulate. I would have to drive at least 45 minutes to an hour. To go
I know exactly where you live now, motherfucker.
Wow, that's amazing, Dave.
Yeah.
So if this is a question for Johnny.
Okay.
If the nearest bookstore is 45 minutes away from you, can you be an artisan author?
Sure. Because, okay, so the number 1 thing, and I said this in the presentation and I did not underscore it nearly as much as I wanted to, despite the fact that I really underscored it, is answer your damn email. Like, the number of times that I have answered somebody's email, just a reader, and they've gone, oh my God, I can't believe you replied to that. The only thing I can conclude is that most authors are not answering their email because it's happened so many times.
They don't.
And I'm like, you pretentious assholes. Like, you have people who are reading your books and you won't answer their emails. Stop being a fucker and answer your email and do it like a human. Don't just be like, oh, I'm trying to think of a reference that I can't think anymore. Okay. Don't just be like, okay, no period, send that email, right? So you just need to actually reply to them like a human being. And that doesn't require divulging your location at all.
So you don't use like the AI prompt like humans response?
Right, exactly. Talk to my chat bot. I got Johnny Bot out there. When people email me, it's like you get actually me. And there are people who will ask, well, what about blah, blah, blah? And it'll be some long thing. And I'll spend, like I said, I'll spend 15, 20 minutes sometimes answering an email because that's a better spend for me than an ad, even though I will start doing ads, even though I haven't been.
Oh, actually, I'm glad that you said that, Johnny. So that was a really big takeaway. Do you want to talk about ads at all? I know it's not a deep subject that we need to go into, but that was a takeaway from Author Nation, right? Like,
it was for me. So one of the things that I walked away with is, in case you guys haven't gotten this, it should be apparent, right? Like Sean knows it.
He's a contrarian.
And I'm stubborn, right? And I want to do the things the way that I want to do them. And that's part of the reason that I wasn't a fit for Sterling and Stone, where everybody thinks of other people. Fuck that, right? So I didn't want to do ads because I was like, I don't know, that's just a lot. And I definitely don't want to do social media. So what I came away with from Author Nation thinking
Johnny, this is actually a serious question. Do you feel like when you don't want to do ads, is it an opposition to, and I know we both get this, where like, we should be good enough. We don't need to place ads, right? Or
not anymore.
Is it more like, I just don't want to do it? Like, it's a shitty thing to learn and stay on top of.
I just didn't want to deal with it. And I think maybe there was a time when I thought I should be good enough, but if there is, then it's gotten buried in the, I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So what I came away with Author Nation is, if you don't want to do ads, fine. If you don't want to do social media, fine. But here's what you shouldn't do. Neither. right? Like I need to do one or the other. Willow Winters, who I thought was brilliant, she doesn't do ads, but she does a shit ton of social media. I don't want to do social media more than I don't want to do ads.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I will do ads at this point. And it supposedly ads to a Shopify store is, I assume that there's a lot to figure out. Like I have to figure that out, is actually better than to like an Amazon. I mean, Amazon ads natively, I think, are their own thing. But if you run Facebook ads it's better to run Facebook ads to a direct store. Is kind of what I'm getting.
Well, yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you don't have line of sight to the customer, and then you don't get to keep the customer. So it's two things that suck.
Right. And if your rapid release the Venn circle of rapid release tends to overlap with Kindle Unlimited exclusivity pretty severely, right? Like those two things tend to be the same. So just to be clear, we're talking about a wide, or I would say like aggressively wide approach. I've done Kickstarters. I do have a direct store now at johnnybtruantbooks.com. And those sorts of things they're a lot. But there are also things that you can control. So like, Sean, when you were saying you don't own the customer data, but if you have an ad and you send them to your direct store, then you can tell whether they bought, you have a pixel, you have some information. Whereas if Amazon, you have no idea whether that worked.
So I have a question regarding, you're having more one-on-one conversations with your readers. You're getting to know your readers better.
Yeah.
How much does that actually inform the next story you're going to write, or the story after that? If you get a lot of feedback, obviously you know when something's working or what people love about a particular story, you can write the next one, or if you're doing a series.
I try not to listen to that particular kind of feedback in terms of like story. Now, there was somebody who contacted me. Her name was Holly, and she said, write more alien books. And I will admit to having made a note of that, because that's a vague sort of write more alien books is different than, man, I wish you hadn't done XYZ, or I wish something really granular. So I would say that like noting that people like particular things is fair, but I don't feel like I'm going to make the decision based on, I feel like 20 people told me this and 2 people told me this, so I'm going to do the 20 because it will sell better. So one of the pillars again is art first, profit second. Notice it doesn't mean profit never. Right? Like it's not, because there are times when Sean and I, because you were enabling this too, motherfucker. There were times when the two of us were like, let's just do whatever and it'll never sell, but who cares because it's fun. And I think that's great. I think you should express yourself. Plugged is, so I have somebody very interested in Plugged, but to be fair, I am going to give him the book. I'm just going to hand it to him. But that's the sort of thing I think that you need to think art first. What is it that speaks to me about this world and this story, and then how do I commoditize it or not, right? There are things that we've written. Devil May Care is a perfect example of something that will probably never sell very well, but we wanted to write it. I'm speaking for both of us, but when Sean and I were kind of in like super production mode, it was, let's take one of those a year, like as a reward almost, because we want to express ourselves.
Yeah,
and I think those are artistic decisions.
We know they'll never make any money, but they feed us creatively.
Yeah. So I still write what I want. I don't think about what is that the market want. And I mean, it's all over the place. If you guys know me like old school Johnny, like I don't have any consistent stuff. I write in every genre except for romance. And the only reason it's not romance is because we gave up on that, right? Like that was kind of a siloed thing, but we tried it in the experiment of the idea of experimenting. And Unicorn Western is like, what the fuck is that? And you write it next to Pretty Killer, which is a very kind of serious, but also a little sarcastic sometimes, thriller murder mystery that was very intense and layered. Those don't belong side by side at all, except if you're an artisan author and you are the central core. And because I think people are looking for, this is one of the things I said in the presentation, is that the world is a little less friendly and a little less magical every day, like the real world. But people still want friendliness, and they still want connection, and they still want magic. So if you can give them connection, if you can give them friendliness and magic and make their day better, then I think you should do it. And that's kind of my guiding principle, is I want to connect with people rather than just, can I sell you this next book because my algorithmic thinking says that you will buy this next book.
So are you going to be writing a cozy dog mystery at any point?
No, because my muse doesn't speak to me on that.
The funny thing is an amazing pitch for it.
Well, so that's actually kind of funny, because there is a world in which you could make the pitch and you could make the beat and I would write it. Like, I could definitely see that happening.
Dave, do you want to start brewing on this with me?
They come back together for a cozy dog mystery.
Well, so
no,
to be clear, Sean and I are still writing together.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what's
actually
so
funny.
cool about this separation is that we are still friends and
Friends
creative
with
collaborators.
benefits, huh? Am I right?
Damn straight.
Last year when Johnny came back from, well, it wasn't Artisan Author, but he came back from the Vegas author event, 20 books to 50K. And I was like, yeah, just let me know when you want to write again. Let me know when you want to write again. And then the end of summer came and he goes, August 1st, bitch, I'm ready. And then I was like, next year. Like I was just like swallowed, hammered by a bunch of shit. And then it was just a few days ago. I'm like, okay, dude, how about this book for this release date?
You can
Like,
say what it is if you want. You can make that exclusive
We're committed?
announcement.
We're committed?
Yeah, I think we're committed.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, so this is the first. Dave doesn't even know what this is. Dave, do you want to guess?
He's gonna
Another
fucking
Unicorn
hate it.
Western book?
Yes, Unicorn Heathens. So Unicorn Heathens, which already has an outline, and I've been in love with this idea for a long, long time. And there were a couple of reasons not to write it. There were a couple of reasons to write it. But I pitched it as this book on this launch date. Let's go. And then Johnny said, can we do this one thing? And I was like, we can. And then now it's an official thing. So yeah, I'm really, really, really excited about Unicorn Heathens in 2025. It's really happening.
Right on.
Awesome.
Johnny, do you have anything that, where you want to send people? Because I can tell.
Hell.
Or Dave, would you like to end the show for us?
Hey, Johnny, is there anywhere that you'd like to send people?
Yeah, so the pre-order for the Artisan Author is at johnnybtruant.com/artisan.
And when do you think it's coming out?
So we'll see. Because what I did with that was I don't know when
Very
I'm
non-committal. Okay.
Well, I don't know when in the year I'm going to have time to write it. And I think there are some things that I want to figure out before I actually write it. So I set the pre-order date as November of 2025. And the reason for that is because I've started to think conference to conference. So there was a lot that changed for me personally between the last 20 books and the first Author Nation, November to November. And so this year I'm framing my year not as a calendar year, but as 2024 Author Nation to 2025 Author Nation. So it's like right before the 2025 Author Nation, first week of November. But if I finish it early, I will move it up. So I'm giving myself all that time, but you can move a pre-order up without penalty, which is what I will do if I write it earlier. So it's at johnnybtruant.com/artisan.
And for people that want to read your books right now,
johnnybtruantbooks.com. Or just look for me. And of course, if you look for Sean, then a lot of those books are going to be Johnny books too.
and if they want to meet you at your local bookstore or coffee shop, email you.
Yeah, sure. JohnnyBTruant.com.
Oh, he's going to die.
No, believe me, dude, this is like a quality problem. If 20 people contacted me and said, I want to meet you for signed copies of Unicorn Western Full Saga, I'd be like, shit, okay. I
When
guess
do
I
you
can
think
do that.
Dave's going to start catfishing you?
Start? You don't think it's already happening?
Is it possible you have an email relationship with Dave without knowing it?
Oh, I think that's distinctly likely. I think that's distinctly likely, Nate Norman.
Hey. All right. Well, on that creepy ass note, thank you. Thank you for coming back. I look forward to talking to you again. And,
Right on.
Thank you, Sean, for joining us once again. It really feels like it's always going to be you with me. on this
I
show.
feel like you.
I'm never going solo.
This was presented to me
Pacino in
as
Godfather
this
3
was
right
presented to
now.
me as it's Dave's show. I'll maybe occasionally show up, and Author Nation was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna be on all those shows."
Dude, Dave wasn't even 10 minutes into the first show when he was like bailing water out of the boat. He's like, shit.
I take time to find my
He's an
my-
artisan
my gold
author.
feet.
He's an artisan podcaster.
He's an artisan podcaster for sure. But Johnny, always great having you. I'm sure we'll do it very soon again. And until
In
next
2 weeks.
I think we're talking about achieving flow in our next episode.
Yes.
Well, when you said achieving and had a long cliffhanger there, I was waiting for it to be another word.
I was trying to mystery box that shit. All right.
You
Well,
can achieve the strongest flow of your life if you listen to the next podcast.
Thank you, everybody.
one weird trick. Bye, everyone.
Write, publish, repeat. It echoes through the air. A chorus for creators. A call to those who dare. With cookies as his compass and a pen that won't retreat. He journeys through the pages. Write, publish, repeat.